Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. You'll see that the studio is different today. We're actually downstairs in what used to be a guest bedroom. Everything bedroom has been cleaned out of it. We just finished the book, and we did a video the other day about the book. And so we thought just leave it here because it's all set up nicely, and we'll do a few morning conversations from here. Easy.
Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about the third chakra and this whole transition. So on the face of it, that doesn't mean anything particularly. So one of the things that is happening is this huge transition is unfolding. Everything's being disrupted. And when you start to recognize one really fundamental piece, this is a spiritual shift. So the underlying framework is a spiritual transition. So if you take it up a little bit, and where most all of you are playing, the third chakra is really engaged in this. It's very much engaged in how the third dimension was created. So the third chakra is very much about four words: power, control, judgment, and resistance. And so when you look at the world today, you're seeing this disruption occurring, and mine is beginning to be challenged or threatened, or I'm finding I have to take charge or exert myself.
Or control.
Yeah. So let's talk about this in a way of a couple of individuals that basically bring this all into a context.
Are we going to name names?
Yeah. So there was a man named Bill O'Reilly. For many of you around the world who don't know Bill O'Reilly, he was a prime Fox News contributor, many shows of his own. Very smart man, very intelligent, and very entitled. And so Harvard graduate, and kind of grew up with this entitlement. But in the course of the entitlement, it's really interesting. A lot of times people with this level of skills, very capable guy, basically creates an opinion about the world. And then that opinion is truth. And then when you have a platform like Fox News, you get to speak the truth from your point of view. But in this case, and in numbers of people's cases, what you watch is power and control start to come into the mix. And so that process, when you have power and control and you have a sense of entitlement, that structure is a huge platform for doing good and also not doing so good.
Potentially. It's like he created a box, his own world he was living in.
Yeah. And so in that process of entitlement with power and control and intelligence and the truth, what you watched over numbers of years is this very capable man becoming abusive, becoming sarcastic, becoming expanding his sense of power by taking advantage of others, by abusing others, by calling people out. And with his intelligence, he really created a belief system among a lot of people who are inclined to be in agreement with that point of view. And so this huge, massive audience, which built Fox News to a great extent, kind of went along with the Bill O'Reilly. But in that entitlement and power and abuse, the abuse side plays out too. And so one of the things that sarcasm and that I know and get out of my way, you're smaller than me, you don't count. Intimidation came into mix. And so when you begin to play that game, you actually create a lot of hostility and a lot of admiration. But in the case that doesn't come to the surface, especially when you're in the news media, you don't get to see the bad side of it. That abusive side took its toll in numbers of ways, and one of those ways was sexual abuse. And so he wound up getting himself in trouble often and having to pay lawsuits to take care of it. To one woman, $32 million was paid for this whole sense of sexual abuse. But that finally came out, and when that came out, the house of sand collapsed. And so he falls from grace, he falls from power, he gets fired, and now this huge image is shattered.
Well, and it's as if he got busted and his box isn't his box anymore. It's falling apart. The walls of the box are falling down around him, and it's confusing.
Yeah. Now this is,
for him.
We'll come back to Bill O'Reilly in a minute, but this is what's happening to, in a way, every single person on the planet. You're finding that your structure, your spiritual structure, your status quo, how you've manipulated yourself, moved yourself, positioned yourself, you can't take your baggage with you on this journey. This is a spiritual journey. You're going from a third dimensional state to a fifth dimensional state of well-being. You can't take your baggage with you. That's kind of the prerequisite. So as a spiritual being in a state of comfortableness in third dimension, your foundation is being shaken. It's like the earth all of a sudden moving. If you've ever been in an earthquake, it's really a startling experience because you have no control. There's nothing, you have no sense of what to do in that space. So you go right into a threat, a safety issue in that space. So going back to Bill O'Reilly, his earthquake happened. And then he's been kicked out. And now here's a naked man, in a manner of speaking, having no sense of himself because that third dimensional world is shattered. Very vulnerable, very exposed, very insecure. All those words come to the surface. And the reason we're pointing to Bill O'Reilly is because we watched something the other night where Bill O'Reilly did a podcast and he blames God. Now, who else can you blame when there's nobody that you can point to? Everybody's abandoned you.
I can't point to myself.
No, I can't. Well, we know other people do that
fault.
too. We'll talk about them also. But in this context, I can't accept that I did this.
That this happened to me.
That my truth may not be the truth.
Yeah.
And so in this podcast, it was really both sad and interesting because here's a man who now has no makeup on. His background setting is not beautiful. He doesn't have roses in his background. And here is a kind of shattered personality.
Very raw.
Yeah. And yet can't come to grips with, I did this. I was abusive. I was exerting power in places that...
Well, he's not taking responsibility.
Exactly.
For his own actions. He's
No.
blaming the world out there. He's blaming God for something that happened to him.
Well, see, God is the only one you can blame where you can't have any back talk.
Right? God's not going to argue with you.
You don't have the last word.
Yeah.
It's this recognition that there's something bigger than I am in that context. And so the point is not to pick on Bill O'Reilly. We could also talk about Harvey Weinstein.
Right.
Another individual who rose to power and also rose to abuse. And this power, control, judgment, resistance, third chakra. It's about everybody. Can't take your baggage with you. So this sense of power and control, well, here's this movie magnate, has his own studio, been recognized with Academy Awards and all kinds. And again, a place of exerting his power through sexual abuse. And all of a sudden gets called on it.
Well, and the Hollywood culture supported it since the 20s or since whenever Hollywood started. That's what producers and directors did.
Right. It was allowed, it was accepted. Now this is really an important piece, I'm kind of talking to everybody, is the fabric of the nature of what you accept as truth is changing. And it's at a very fundamental level. It's as fundamental as changing the sheets on your bed from something you're used to something that has a little different texture to it. But you can't really tell the difference, but something's different. So in Harvey Weinstein's case, though, it's kind of interesting. He became exposed kind of in a place with his pants down and didn't have anybody to blame. He said, I did this in a manner of speaking. But nonetheless, all of those who were felt put upon are really hostile. And so you're seeing a whole reactionary state, third dimension. They're people pushing against, being angry about. Now if you take that and you kind of magnify that into the world around you, you're watching a lot of these different pieces. So maybe over the next couple of weeks, let's talk about some aspects of this.
Well, and the bigger question is, where in my space, where in your space do you do a similar thing? So sure, these are famous people having this experience, but they're in front of us to help us see where we do the same thing.
Exactly.
So where in my world have I created a box that's very limiting, that through this box, through this filter, I judge the world around me, or I do the power, control, resistance, and judgment.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this more in the future, but that comes from the second chakra, and that comes from the first chakra. And so in the spiritual world, where people talk about chakras and this nature of things, there is generally an accepted belief about that first chakra that it's all about the survival of the body. And it's not. It's about the well-being of the body. But when the rational mind is in that reality of keeping me safe and having me fit in, and then another part of the story, the ego that's wounded basically has a level of fear in its space, and the first chakra turns into keep me safe in survival. It says to the second chakra, create in survival, and be aware, protected, look out for, be safe in my own little universe. What you're watching is everybody's own little universe is beginning to be shaken. So,
and you know, the other side of this, watching these two men, it's opened the door for people to come forward and say, me too. And so it's kind of given groups of women and men permission to say, this is in my space, this happened to me. And so how freeing that must be for them.
Can be very. So here's the issue. How do you choose? How do you choose? Because it's one of these, like, do I want to hold on to these really uncomfortable feelings of protection or fear or embarrassment, sadness, the sarcasms, the shame of these big words that we carry around because somebody did something. I gave up my seniority. I got taken advantage of, and I didn't have the sense of power to say no. That's not a blame or a guilt concept. It's all coming to the surface to be released, to be let go of. And if it can be perceived as that, I'm letting my baggage go. I don't have to apologize. I don't have to be held accountable. I don't have to be embarrassed about. If you did something, it's very possible you can go and say, I'm sorry. But I'm really not going to that side of the issue right here. This is the baggage that's coming up, and allowing it to leave is really a big deal, a necessity right now. And that third chakra, very much in that control of not letting the relaxation happen. I'm afraid is really how the third chakra is performing.
Let's continue this.
We'll do that
conversation.
So we'll come back next week. Let's play in the same space.
Yeah.
Because we painted the walls and did all the things that. So with that, hope that gives you a little bit of insight into what's happening maybe to and around you. And we'll see what we can do next week. Blessings.